I'm really excited about welcoming Stephen Wanta. Stephen's the owner of Stephen Wanta Architectural Firm, which is based in New York City. Seasoned, experienced architect, specializing in residential interiors and custom finishing or furnishings. And he loves to design custom work. That's kind of his forte. And one of his delights is occasionally he gets the opportunity to design a yacht. And so that was interesting to me. I don't think I've ever met anyone who's done that before. But Stephen, I'm delighted to have you today on the Edge of Success podcast. So welcome aboard.
It's great to be here.
Stephen, most of us are curious about background, how you got into your industry, a little bit about what led you to where you are today. So you mind sharing a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
I grew up making models and building cities out of construction paper and all sorts of things like that, and Lego pretty early from 6 years old. And everybody told me I was going to grow up to be an architect. And that was sort of a regular refrain. I didn't really ever fully believe it, but I applied to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, for graphic design, and got in. And by the end of my first year, I got honors in three-dimensional design. And then still with some resistance, I went into the architecture division, but the industrial design department, where we shared the sophomore studio, which is sort of grueling. At the end of that first semester, the person who ran the program, he said to me, either you stay in industrial design and I'm going to give you an F, or you go into architecture and I'll give you an A. Before I finished school, I got a job offer from Raphael Vignoli, and I worked with him really by his side for 7 years. And then I got turned off on large scale projects. While I was working on high rises and all kinds of large scale projects, we would get smaller scale projects in which he would just say, here, we need this done. I decided that I liked that a lot. And when I was growing up, I liked everything, leatherworking, calligraphy, model making, all kinds of things. And so the idea of working in interiors where I can work on projects that include decorative art, we actually do commission art at some point. What happened was, even though I was working 70, 80-hour weeks at Vignoli, I also had started to do some smaller projects on the side. And then I got essentially offered a couple of real significant interiors projects. I decided to leave, and that was late 87, and set up my own firm. And I did take a hiatus for 2 years working for Peter Marino, 2001 through 2003, which was, for me, fortunate because after 9/11, the whole city sort of froze up for like a year. And then I was working primarily as an architect, all kinds of different projects, townhouses and lofts and apartments. And then the decorating side of it, the interior design, kind of happened organically, where clients started asking, what do you think about this couch? And turned out I had a real opinion about that. And then we were, like typical of architects, we were already designing in very involved built-ins. And I did a lot of work where things essentially between sheetrock and furniture. So the framers and the carpenters used to complain to me that I was making them, they basically were acting like they were cabinet makers, but they're making it out of sheetrock and all of that. And then little by little, I just started more and more pieces and also designing furniture. That was a rocky road at the start, but now routinely I design all kinds of things, tables, lots of sofas, side tables, coffee tables, all kinds of things for projects, and which I really do enjoy doing.
Yeah, I love the fact that you have that ability to go from scratch and visualize what the client is talking about and then create something. It's really kind of almost like creating something out of nothing, which not everybody in your space does. Stevens, I always say you don't love everything about business. There are some challenges. You have some crazy clients, or maybe sometimes it's receivables, trying to get them to really pay you afterwards. There's all kinds of challenges. But I also find that everyone loves something about what they do. As you think about all the things you've done through the years, and you've done a lot, what's one thing that just comes to mind that you just love doing? This just kind of lights you up. What would that be?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. There's types of projects like the yachts. If I could get a yacht a year, I would literally just stop everything else and just do that. I like it because it's sort of holistic. And also, as I mentioned to you, the research phase is lovely, where you basically travel around and look at other yachts, whatever lovely location they may be docked at. At a certain point, I realized that I just really like working with people. And the thing I'm known for is that I develop the style of the project from what actually communicates something to the client and what their aspirations are and interests and all of that. I'm interpreting that. I'm kind of painting a portrait with that. And it means that from project to project, I don't have a particular look that I deploy. Instead, the projects vary significantly from a quite traditional and even within traditional realms, quite a spectrum, and then on to modern and quite unusual projects that we've done.
That's interesting because what you're talking about, connecting with people, understanding them and really what they're envisioning, and then you have the ability to take their concepts or their ideas and actually create something that aligns with really what they're looking for, which is kind of unique. I also find as we think a little bit about industries, in every industry there are challenges. So maybe you can think back of challenges from the past, present, or in the future, but in your particular field, what would be a challenge or something that might stick out? It just comes along with your territory, but it's there and it's something you have to work at overcoming.
So there's a few different ways I look at that. I mean, one of them is that architects and designers, and it's scale. I mean, my projects are smaller scale, but there's still, as somebody said, when you do a house, you have 1,000 decisions to make, like actually, like no exaggeration, you have like 1,000. And we are generalists in an environment, certainly a professional environment or a business environment, where people are more and more specialized. And we're the people who have to have this overview of an enormous amount of information, essentially, of all kinds, and try to keep an aesthetic viewpoint and a budget and a schedule and all of those things for work that is, for the most part, custom. We just shake our heads and say minutia. And it does come down to this paint drop on the floor and that door not closing quite right, and just on and on, those things that need to be seen, first of all, and then fixed or dealt with. And so I think there's that aspect to it, is that you have to kind of have the energy for the long haul, day in and day out, of dealing with that. I'm sort of past, for the most part, the part of my career where for the financial side is as much of a difficulty, because when I was much younger, I just was so interested in the aesthetic side that I would just needed to focus on it more. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And I turned that all around with how we deal with our contracts and billing, and which has helped enormously. I have been lucky with my relatively small staff, and we stay very nimble. My colleagues that I've known since college who have their own firms are always amazed of how much work we get out the door with like a third of the staff they have. And so it does involve a certain level of focus, and also asking more of the people who are working for me than I think done sometimes. I mean, pretty much from the get-go.
In addition to challenges, there are also opportunities in every field. As you look ahead, what are some opportunities that you see on the horizon that are exciting?
I think the AI thing, I've seen the Terminator movies, and I'm actually a big science fiction fan. So I've read plenty of stories of one sort or another. For the most part, maybe not the best way of looking at it. For example, we had a piece of furniture to put in a rendering, and it wasn't one I designed, so we didn't have a model of it. The furniture company we were buying it from was small, and so they didn't have their own model of it. One of my assistants did a couple of prompts, and you can rotate it and put different fabric on it and everything. And in some more complicated ways, we use it because we are always moving pretty quickly, partly because we have a lot to do. And so we've actually just fed it into certain things about we're gutting a little townhouse in Brooklyn and looking at the structure there. And I have an engineer, but we ran what we were doing through a simple AI set of prompts as a check, right? In other words, it's just like another thing you can get. I have some friends who are running very, very large firms, and they're creating their own libraries of everything they've ever done. They call up a curtain wall for a new building, but they have this idea they wanted to do this instead of that, but they can call up 200 curtain wall details of their own that they've done, right? And modify them accordingly. Started working in 1980 outside of school. It was all hand drafting for the most part. Unless you were doing a nuclear reactor or an oil refinery, everything was being done by hand. There was a lot of opportunity for interns and for learning. It's a very labor intensive field, or has been. That's sort of one concern I have, is that there's not going to be as many roles. This is already happening for the people coming into the industry. When I get asked about this by kids who are coming out of school right now who either are interested in working here or children of acquaintances, what I tell them is to be much more involved with the idea of making things, of what it actually takes to make stuff, as opposed to I'm just drawing on a piece of paper something that somebody else is going to take and figure out how to do, essentially. And in other words, I'm just drawing the end result I want. It served me well from all my hands-on years as a kid making models and doing all kinds of things like that. So far, I can't tie your shoes. Now, there may be a robot that can, right? But it's still really the understanding about how to make things and the variables that are part of actually bringing something into the real world. Some of that's extremely sophisticated. I have my beloved 3D printer, and that's made me have to understand certain things about how I draw in order to communicate with it. And then it works, and it's synergistic like any medium, right? Yeah. Which is the things that you can now do with that particular technology. It's different than what's been traditionally.
To me, you're guiding younger folks who have a desire to go into your field to help them see skill set and aptitude that they need to develop that will serve them well in your field, no matter what technology does.
Right.
Because I think technology, you've seen it in your lifetime, going from actually doing the drawings yourselves to probably a CAD type system. And now you're seeing another level of technology developing. But really, the ability to think the way you do and actually create things and then personally adding that component, I think obviously is pretty powerful for folks. As we go along in our careers or whatever, there's always some things you can learn to do, maybe learn not to do. What are some things that stick out? Well, here's one maybe I wouldn't do again because it didn't work, or here's one that really I think people should really recognize to be important in the field that I'm in.
I'd say one is to just make sure you're getting paid enough, because in our business, we work hard. I find it refreshing that most of the younger set that I encounter coming into the field do have a higher opinion of themselves as far as how much they should be paid and all of that. When I arrived here, I knew people working for big offices that were working 60-hour weeks and then also had jobs as waiters or waitresses so they could afford to live in New York City because of how little they were being paid from well-established big offices. I think it's important. And, you know, from my own problem, it's not like I want to dwell on it at all. I just want it to work so I can do the things that I really love doing.
Yeah. The resources, you know, give you freedom and potential or possibility. And I think it also affirms value and appreciation because you are in a unique field that not everyone desires to go into or even has the aptitude to go into.
Yeah.
Stephen, I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Same
if people
here.
wanted to learn more about your firm and your work, maybe there's some yacht owner out there who didn't know Stephen did that. What's the best way for them to get up with you?
Two ways. I am on Instagram. It's Wanta_architect. Great way or fun way to see my work because there's some very old projects, there's brand new stuff. And then the other thing is to email me, wanta@wanta-architect.com. I'm happy to show the boats to anybody along with some other projects that are not on Instagram or otherwise for privacy reasons.
Thanks for spending a little time with me today. I'm sure people will find our conversation interesting, and hopefully they'll take a look at your Instagram site. And who knows, maybe you'll get a little business out of this as well. So
right now.
Anyway, take care.
Okay.